Poor white people are the most emotionally and psychologically abused group in all of America, bar none. It's not even close. It's not, no other racial, ethnic, or class group has even come close to being as totally propagandized as poor white people are. And it's because there has been a diabolical, centuries long effort to turn them against themselves first and turn them against other people so that they never turn against the rich. The energy in America today is very fraught. It is very tense. And there is a lot of fear, but do you notice who the fear is coming from? We're fine. We knew all along who and what this country was because it never tried to hide itself to us. That energy that we're feeling, yeah, that's the collective awakening of poor and lower middle class white people who, until extremely, unbelievably recently, genuinely thought the government was on their side. They legitimately thought that. They're actually blown by the amount of hidden racists, by the amount of corruption, by the amount of scheming and backroom dealing and pedophilia. Like, they are actually shocked. And it's because back in the 1600s and 1700s, when poor white people were working in solidarity with free men and enslaved black people and Native Americans, the rich people got so scared, so horrified by the thought of them being outnumbered by people who hate them, that they meticulously brainwashed poor white people into hating everybody and into being the foot soldiers of white supremacy so that they would not overthrow the rich elite. This is not a conspiracy. This is documented American history. Bacon's rebellion in 1676 was the prime example of what the rich white elite feared so much. Bacon's rebellion, so Nathaniel Bacon, right? Nathaniel Bacon was one of those frontier whites who the rich elite had pushed out to the edge of civilization so that they could act as a buffer between the pissed off Native Americans and the rich people. They literally put them out there as food. They literally put them out there to the wolves, literally and figuratively, to be like, okay, if the Native Americans get mad at us, they're going to kill the poor whites first so that we have time to hop on these ships and get away. That was the rich elite's thinking. And Nathaniel Bacon, who wasn't even poor, by the way, he had a little bit of money in his pocket, but he was still pissed off at the way that poor white people in general were being treated. So Nathaniel Bacon, he said, okay, I got something for you. I'm going to organize a militia, hundreds of men strong, with not just white people. I'm going to get some free men. I'm going to get some enslaved black people, and we're going to turn all this shit around. So Nathaniel Bacon and a bunch of black people, like hundreds of black people, like this is hundreds of people basically just took up arms against the federal government and was like, no, fuck you. No, we're actually sick of being treated like we don't matter, of being treated like cattle. And when I say cattle, I use that word very deliberately. Because when people talk about Black history versus white history, they act as if black people were the only people being used as objects for profit. No. White people have a history of struggle. White people, particularly poor white people, have a history of being food in the belly of the beast that is the American system. But the rich elite have been, again, so thorough and so meticulous at rewriting the history that a lot of you don't know that. Capitalism had gotten to such a degree in England that there was an increasing amount of vagrant poor just wandering the streets. People out of work, people starving to death, people freezing to death, just wandering the streets of England. And the England elite started getting sick of it because rich people don't like to see poor people. unless they're working, unless they have their heads down and their backs are bent over with labor. Rich people don't like to see poor people. So in England, they started passing these laws, beggars' laws. And if you got caught begging, for food because your children were starving, they would strip you to the waist and whip you bloody in England. Poor white people have never been the prize. And so then it got to the point where the English elite were so sick of all these poor people wandering around their cities that they were like, what should we do? Should we pay them more? Nah, that can't be it. Let's just ship them off to America as punishment. Let's arrest a bunch of people who we don't like, who make us look bad, and we should just ship them off to America as punishment. So tens of thousands of English convicts were shipped off to America as punishment. And the state of those indentured servant ships was not much better than slave ships. Let's be clear about that. They weren't chained to the deck, shitting and pissing and menstruating all over each other like the slaves were. But it was not a cushy cruise to America. The rich people, both in the American colonies and in England, were making a lick off these indentured servants. And so when the servants would sign up to be indentured under, duress and in desperation, just trying to escape the conditions of their life in England, they would lock these people up and imprison them until the voyage set sail, just to make sure they didn't run away. These poor people, they would just lock them up to make sure they didn't run away after they agreed to work for a master for 5 to 7 years. They called them masters too, yeah. The voyage to America lasted 8, 10, or 12 weeks, and the servants were packed into ships with the same fanatic concern for profits that marked the slave ships. If the weather was bad and the trip took too long, they ran out of food. The C.C. Flower, leaving Belfast in 1741, was at sea 16 weeks, and when it arrived in Boston, 46 of its 106 passengers were dead of starvation, 6 of them eaten by the survivors. On another trip, 32 children died of hunger and disease and were thrown into the ocean. Gottlieb Mittelberger, a musician traveling from Germany to America around 1750, wrote about his voyage. This is an account from this German about what he saw on an indentured servant's ship to America in the mid-1700s. During the journey, the ship is full of pitiful signs of distress, smells, fumes, horrors, vomiting, various kinds of seasickness, fever, dysentery, headaches, heat, constipation, boils, scurvy, cancer, mouth rot, and similar afflictions, all of them caused by the age and the high salted state of the food, especially of the meat, as well as by the very bad and filthy water. Add to all that shortage of food, hunger, thirst, frost, heat, dampness, fear, misery, vexation, and lamentation, as well as other troubles. On board our ship, on a day on which we had a great storm, a woman about to give birth and unable to deliver under the circumstances was pushed through one of the portholes into the sea. This is the conditions that the indentured servants traveled to America over, and when they got here, they were sold on auction blocks, just like the black slaves. They were beaten and they were whipped. The servant women were raped. And when they would try to take these people to court, because these masters were violating the terms of their contracts by being extremely severely abusive to these indentured servants, the court was filled with, you guessed it, rich masters who would acquit them. One servant died because his mistress cut off all of his toes, and she was acquitted. Another master was brought to court for raping 2 servant women. He was also known to beat his wife and children, and he beat and whipped another servants, had him tied up in the basement, and he died too. And guess what? He also got acquitted. This is how poor white people have always been treated by rich white people in this country. And yet they still continue to support them, because rich white people have put in so much effort to turn poor white people against everybody but them. Go to part 2.